I suppose there is. I mean, I suppose what we did was give it up. We actually did give it up when Freddie died, and we felt...
He was the quiet one. No wild costumes, no spotlight-grabbing solos, no tabloid scandals. But behind Queen's thundering anthems and unforgettable performances stood a silent genius, John Deacon. The man who wrote Another One Bites the Dust, and then walked away from it all. For decades, he vanished, no interviews, no tours, no goodbyes. But now, at 73, Deacon's silence is finally breaking. And what he's revealing about his bond with Freddie Mercury is shaking fans to their core. This isn't just a story of music. It's a story of loyalty, grief, and a man who chose silence over stardom. He never wanted the spotlight. While Freddie Mercury dazzled with unmatched charisma, and Brian May's guitar soared across arenas, there was a man quietly holding it all together. A man whose bass lines carried Queen's heartbeat. That man was John Deacon. He wrote some of the band's biggest hits. He engineered their sound behind the scenes. And then, when the band lost its soul, he walked away. Completely. No interviews, no stage, no farewell tour, just silence. Now, at 73, the man who vanished is finally breaking that silence. What he's revealed about Freddie Mercury and their unique friendship has stunned even those who knew them best. It wasn't a press conference. It wasn't a TV appearance. It wasn't even meant to be public. But in a letter shared privately with a Queen archivist, and later confirmed by insiders close to the band, John Deacon reflected on his time with Freddie in a rare, deeply personal message. He called Freddie the engine behind everything, and admitted that after his death, the air in the room changed forever. What stood out most, though, was how John described their friendship, not in flashy rock star terms, but with quiet reverence. Freddie didn't just pull us into the light, he wrote. He saw the light in each of us and made sure the world saw it too. This emotional revelation has added a new dimension to John's decades of silence. It wasn't about withdrawal. It was about mourning. It was about honoring a bond that transcended music. And perhaps most surprising was John's admission that he still listens to Queen's songs, especially the ones Freddie sang on when he's alone. Sometimes the songs feel like they're breathing again, he wrote, like Freddie's just in the other room. For fans who wondered if John had turned his back on the band, the truth is far more human. He never stopped loving the music. He never stopped being part of Queen. He just couldn't bear to keep going without the one person who made it all feel like magic. This story, of a quiet genius who built legends in silence, and then chose silence to preserve a legend, continues to captivate the world. Because John Deacon didn't just walk away from fame, he walked toward peace. And in doing so, he gave us one final unspoken encore, proof that love, in its quietest form, can echo longer than applause. John Richard Deacon was born on August 19, 1951, in Leicester, England. He entered the world at St. Francis Private Hospital into a modest, working-class family. His father, Arthur Henry Deacon, worked for Norwich Union Insurance, while his mother, Lillian Molly, raised the family with warmth and discipline. But John's early years were not untouched by grief. His older brother, Robert, tragically passed away at the age of 6. That loss cast a quiet shadow over the Deacon household. The silence left behind by Robert's absence would shape much of John's emotional world, a world of inward reflection rather than outward expression. Years later, a younger sister, Julie, would join the family, bringing joy and balance. But that early heartbreak, the empty chair at the dinner table, the quiet birthdays that followed, never fully disappeared. In 1960, the Deacons relocated to Oadby, a quiet suburb on the outskirts of Leicester. It was the kind of town where everyone knew your name, and for the quiet boy with the curious eyes, it became a quiet sanctuary. John, nicknamed Deeks or DC by friends, wasn't one to seek attention. While other boys kicked footballs across muddy fields, John was more likely to be found indoors, nose buried in electronics magazines or fiddling with circuit boards pulled from old radios. His bedroom looked more like a workshop than a teenager's den. He built gadgets from scratch. Once, he even rewired a tape recorder so he could capture songs directly from the radio, a move that seemed innocent at the time, but in hindsight, foreshadowed the inventive brilliance he would later bring to Queen. Even his teachers took notice. At Gartree High School, John quickly stood out, not because he raised his hand the most, but because he asked the smartest questions. He had an engineer's brain wrapped in a musician's heart. While he devoured textbooks, he also began collecting records, immersing himself in the rich, rhythmic soul music that would later define some of Queen's most iconic songs. By age 14, John wasn't just academically gifted. He was already straddling two worlds: the analytical precision of electronics and the raw emotion of music. It was a rare combination, and in just a few years, those twin passions would collide and change rock history forever. He was obsessed with electronics. As a teenager, he read technical magazines, built homemade gadgets, and even modified a tape recorder to record music directly off the radio. He was as brilliant academically as he was quietly inventive, acing his exams at Linden Junior School, Gartree High, and Beecham Grammar. But John's heart beat for soul music. Marvin Gaye, Stevie Wonder, and Motown were the soundtrack of his youth. That love eventually pushed him toward performance. At 14, John scraped together enough borrowed money to buy a rhythm guitar and joined a local band, The Opposition. When their bassist was kicked out for lack of improvement, John took over. He found his true instrument, bass, and never looked back. After 4 formative years with the band, John made what seemed like a detour. In 1969, he was accepted into Chelsea College in London to study electrical engineering. He left music behind, or so he thought. He didn't even bring his guitar with him to university. Then, in September 1969, everything changed again. John went to see Deep Purple at the Royal Albert Hall, a concert that fused rock with orchestral music. The experience reignited his passion for sound. Meanwhile, a new band called Queen was forming. Freddie Mercury, Brian May, and Roger Taylor had already joined forces, but they were still missing a bassist. John first saw Queen perform in October 1970. He wasn't immediately impressed, but fate had other plans. In early 1971, at a disco, a friend introduced him to Brian and Roger. They were still looking for a bassist. John auditioned in a lecture hall at Imperial College. They didn't just choose him for his musical skills. They loved his calm demeanor and his knowledge of electronics. That audition sealed Queen's lineup. John Deacon, the youngest of them all, became the final piece of the puzzle. In June 1971, he played his first show with Queen. The band's chemistry clicked instantly. Though John was quiet, he brought balance. He kept the group grounded, both musically and emotionally. Interestingly, on Queen's debut album in 1973, he was credited as Deacon John. The band thought it sounded more interesting. John hated it. From the second album on, it was back to John Deacon. Many fans don't realize just how much Queen owed to John Deacon, not just for the bass, but for the songwriting. His first writing credit came on the 1974 album Sheer Heart Attack with a song called Misfire, a breezy tune with Caribbean flavor. John even played most of the guitar parts himself, since Brian May was hospitalized at the time. He co-wrote Stone Cold Crazy, and on a night at the opera, he delivered something more heartfelt, You're My Best Friend, written for his fiancée Veronica. The track became one of Queen's most beloved ballads. And then, in 1980, came another One Bites the Dust. It was John's song, his riff, his rhythm, his soul. Inspired by the grooves of soul and disco, it took over the airwaves in both black and white radio stations across America. It became Queen's best-selling single. John's songwriting continued to shine across albums. I Want to Break Free, Back Chat, You and I, Spread Your Wings, all his creations. But even behind the scenes, he played multiple roles. He contributed guitar, piano, and even helped build Queen's sound equipment. He was the band's tech wizard, constructing amplifiers from discarded parts, including the legendary DC amp that Brian May still uses today. He didn't sing lead. He barely even sang in studio, but his fingerprints are all over Queen's greatest moments. On stage, Freddie Mercury was pure electricity. John Deacon was the opposite, calm, introverted, thoughtful. But offstage, their bond was something rare. Peter Freestone, Freddie's longtime assistant, once revealed that Freddie took John under his wing early on. He was the new boy, he said. Freddie wanted to protect him. They traveled together on tour, forming their own quiet alliance within the band. Freddie once described John as quiet, but with a fiery streak underneath. John may have stayed in the background, but he wasn't afraid to speak up when it mattered. Their musical bond ran deep, especially during the 1980s when they steered Queen toward a funkier, dance-driven sound. On Hot Space, John wrote back chat and clashed with Brian May over the guitar solos. He didn't think Brian's style fit. That disagreement sparked one of the band's most heated arguments. Still, the respect remained. On later albums, many songs were co-credited to Deacon and Mercury. Freddie had helped John grow, and John never forgot that. In November 1991, Freddie Mercury released a statement. He had AIDS. Just 24 hours later, he was gone. His death shocked the world, but it broke something inside John Deacon. Freddie's funeral was a private affair, just 35 close friends. Elton John was there. So were Brian, Roger, and John. Outside Freddie's home, fans transformed the walls of Garden Lodge into a shrine. Flowers, notes, candles. It became London's largest rock memorial. For John, the silence that followed was not just grief. It was an emotional shutdown. The music had stopped, and for him, it was over. After Freddie's death, Brian May and Roger Taylor chose to carry Queen's legacy forward, performing, collaborating, and recording. John Deacon chose the opposite. Slowly, he disappeared from public life. No interviews, no events, no music. By the late 90s, he was completely gone. But he didn't vanish entirely. He still kept tabs on Queen's business. He still approved projects. He still gave his opinion, quietly from a distance. He only played with Queen 3 more times, at the Freddie Mercury tribute concert in 1992, at a charity show with Roger in 1993, and finally in 1997 at the Paris premiere of The Show Must Go On. Later that year, the band recorded No One But You, Only the Good Die Young, their last song together. It was a tribute to Freddie. After that, John was done. When Queen teamed up with Robbie Williams for the A Knight's Tale soundtrack, John called their version of We Are the Champions rubbish. He didn't attend their Rock Hall induction. He skipped the Queen plus Paul Rogers tour. He chose peace over performance. In interviews, Brian May and Roger Taylor have admitted they rarely see John. Roger once said John had retired from any kind of social contact. Brian added, "We don't do anything financial without consulting him, but in public, he's disappeared." In 2022, Brian told Rock FM Spain that John had turned down every offer to reunite. Things have changed. Roger and I have adapted. In 2022, Brian told Rock FM Spain that John had turned down every offer to reunite. Things have changed. Roger and I have adapted. But John doesn't want to. And yet, his legacy lives on. In 2013, a newly discovered species of damselfly was named Heteragrion jondiaconi in his honor, a quiet tribute to a man who never chased fame. Today, John Deacon still lives in the same southwest London home he bought with his first Queen paycheck. He spends his days with family. He stays out of the spotlight. He has never returned to the stage or given an interview in over 2 decades. But he's content. And maybe that's enough. The last time the world heard from John Deacon was at the 1992 Freddie Mercury tribute concert. In front of a sold-out Wembley Stadium, after Brian and Roger spoke, John stepped up to the mic. "Hello," he said quietly. "First of all, Brian, Roger, and I would like to thank all the artists performing today. They've given their time and energy to make this tribute to Freddie a reality." His voice cracked. Then he added, "The show must go on." That was it. And with that line, he walked off stage and into the quiet. But those 5 words carried the weight of everything he couldn't bring himself to say. To the world, it was a farewell. But to John Deacon, it was something deeper, closure. It was his final bow, not just to the audience, but to the band, the era, and the person who had made it all worthwhile. After that moment, Deacon's retreat from the spotlight was complete. No interviews, no red carpets, no stage returns, not even for Queen's Rock and Roll Hall of Fame induction or the global success of the Bohemian Rhapsody biopic. For many, that silence felt strange. But those who truly understood John knew he wasn't running from fame. He was protecting something sacred. Freddie Mercury wasn't just a bandmate to John. He was his creative partner, his compass, and perhaps the only one in the group who understood his quiet brilliance. Their bond was rooted in music but built on trust. And when that bond was gone, so too was John's desire to continue. Even today, Brian May and Roger Taylor admit they still consult John on Queen's business decisions. He's still part of the band, they've said. He just doesn't want to be seen. It's a rare kind of loyalty, one that doesn't fade with applause or recognition. So maybe John didn't walk away from Queen. Maybe he walked toward peace, toward the part of the music that can't be performed on a stage. The part that lives quietly in memories, in friendships, and in songs that refuse to die. Because sometimes the greatest tribute you can give to someone is silence. Let us know in the comments. And if you want more powerful stories from the backstage world of music and Hollywood legends, don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring that bell. Because sometimes the loudest voices are the ones that choose not to speak at all.